Let's talk about missions. Let's walk you through what God is doing in our ministry. Journey with us to the mission fields. Allow us saturate your mind and hearts. Get up and close with our close to 2,000 missionaries serving in over 1,600 mission fields in 19 countries across the world. Let us share with you the challenges we face and the victories we've made through the power of God. Let us take you inside EMS. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Inside EMS. My name is Elizabeth Josiah and I'm glad you could be a part of today's program. But before we proceed, let's listen and watch this lyrics video by Kespan Yarazaki, Insungani.
So su gani kuma domin kai ne cikina in sun gani kai nake so su gani kuma domin kai ne cikina when they see me I want them to see you, 'cause you live in me, I'm the reflection of your glory. As I'm breathing and when I stop breathing, let them see thee as the title of my story. Idonka iduna, kafanka kafana, tunaninka tunanina, komainka komaina. Let me go to places you will go. Let me do the things that you will do. Let me be the Bible they can read. Let me be the Jesus they can see. Isungani, kaine keso sugani kuma, domin kaine chikina. Isungani, kaine keso sugani kuma, domin kaine chikina. Teach me all the ways, oh Lord. Teach me all the ways, oh Lord, that I may live for you. Take me all the way, oh Lord. Take me all the way, oh Lord, for I am yours. I am yours. Idanka idona, kapanka kafana. Let me go to places you would go. Let me do the things that you would do. Let me be the Bible they can read. Let me be the Jesus they can see. Let me heal the sick and raise the dead. Let me bring the lost souls unto you. Let the demons flee. I as I speak. Let me calm the storm, let me break the chain, let me set the captives free. Let me do the things that you will do. Let me go to places you will go. I'm the reflection of your glory. Be the title of my story. I'm the reflection of your glory.
Welcome back from the musical break. You're watching Inside EMS on ECWA TV International. On this episode of EMS Missionaries Supporters, the Church series, we'll take a look at a vibrant and mission-minded ECWA church. It was first established in 1956 and happens to be one of the earliest English-speaking ECWA churches in northern Nigeria. It has adopted 8 EMS missionaries and has not failed in its responsibilities despite the harsh economy. I am talking about ECWA Good News Church, Amadu Bello Way. Now let's go hear from the elder in charge of missions as he takes us through the church's history and how they have been involved in missions. Let's take a look.
Okay. My name's Manasseh Atoshi. I'm elder in charge of missions of ECWA Good News Church, 55 Amadu Bello Way. As far as the background of the church is concerned, this church was established in 1956, and it happens to be one of the first English-speaking ECWA churches in northern Nigeria. I understand that the church was established alongside ECWA Good News Church, Kafanchan. I think almost the same time or thereabouts. So this church has been here over time. And one of the pioneer missionaries that labored to bring about the establishment of this church is late now. It's known by Dr. Andrew Stirrett. He's a qualified medical doctor and a qualified pharmacist. He came here in the 20s, and he came to Jos as his way. And most of his evangelistic and missionary activities were done around Terminus and Bukuru Park axis, where presently the New Life for All used to have their Sunday preaching engagements. When Paul Gindri was alive, he used to preach at that spot. And up to date, New Life for All still go there to preach. We also understand that the church spans from here in Terminus up to Bisharawan. It covers the area linking Bisharawan, the old Gongom, Jos Palace, the Jos North office, local government secretariat, that is. All these areas were covered by the late Andrew Stirrett. In fact, they used to call him Baba Memagani in Hausa Palace. He will come and preach and then do medical outreaches. And then after that, he tells people about Christ. And by so doing, people were won over to the Lord Jesus Christ. So in a nutshell, that's how this church started from 1956 to date. Over time, we've had so many pastors who have served in this local assembly. Personally, I joined this church full-time, I think 1989. So talking about some 30-something years ago or thereabouts. When I came here, the pastor I met on ground here was Reverend Salas Yako. Before then, we had a period of about 7-8 years without a pastor. That was after the late Reverend Bluff Obioma left. We had a fallow period without a pastor for about 8 years. We had board of elders and with the chairman in the person of late Elder Araba who went to Nasarawa State and is late now. After then, we had Reverend Silas. Then after Reverend Silas, we had Reverend Kefas Kolani. Then Reverend David Laje, Samuel Atu, Reverend Tuan, Reverend Bawa Garba, and presently, our pastor here now is Reverend Charles Da. And we just thank God for his life and what the Lord is using them to do in this local assembly. And besides the senior pastors, we've had several other associate pastors. And currently we have youth pastors too. The first associate pastor we had here was Reverend Benjamin Nasara. And then we had Reverend Ibul, who was here as associate pastor, Reverend Samuel Akusuk, and several others. So, in a nutshell, that gives a brief background to how this church started and how it has evolved over time. Initially, I mentioned that when I came here full-time, that's 1989. Before then, I used to come here as a guest member. I used to follow my uncle. Then I was in secondary school between 1982-81. I used to follow him here, worship casually and go away. But once I was done with school, I came back to Jos. I've been in Good News Church ever since. Yeah. Good News Church is unique for several reasons. The first, I may say, is it has been a training ground for so many men of God, as it were, both within this city and beyond. There have been several people who have passed through Good News Church, who have been mentored, who have been discipled, who have been equipped, to go and serve in different spheres of human endeavors, and even in church. We have had members of this church who have gone to serve as pastors, as missionaries, evangelists. In fact, there are many churches, Pentecostal churches, leaders, as it were, who passed through this church, who are here working in Jos, and others who have even left. And one of the unique things about Good News Church is our location. We are like in the heart of Jos, in the capital of Jos. There's Terminus is here, and we're here. And so there is hardly any person who will pass through this area I will not recognize ECWA Good News Church. And more so during the crisis period, many people will begin to ask, what's happening to your church? They will call then. This church also has faced and suffered so much attack, from our enemies. They don't want to see this church stand here. If they had wished, they would have wished that this church was swept and carried away from this place. And I told you initially too that the church starts from here and goes up to Bishara 1 and up to Bukuru Park. But imagine how we are squeezed here now. They want to keep moving us away. And because our leaders never had the foresight, to protect and to take possession of this place, that's why we are here the way we are now. All the same, God has been helping us, and we are believing Him that we will continue to remain here and propagate the gospel of Christ until Jesus Christ comes to take us home. And then one of the things that stands us out as a church is our involvement with missions. Yeah, the church is very much mission sensitive. We are involved with the activities of missions, sending missionaries, encouraging missionaries, and supporting missions generally. And Good News Church is also a place where you find love, you find fellowship, you find, brotherly love and affection is displayed here. Just like the Bible says, we mourn with those who mourn, we rejoice with those who rejoice. And when you come here, you will find a lot of that displayed amongst members of this community. Like I said, this church is a church that supports missions and missionary activities. I will not know, or I cannot say for certain when we began to adopt EMS missionaries for support. But I know that immediately this church came to be, it has been supporting missions and missionary activities generally. I was checking one of the minutes of one of the decisions or involvement of the board of elders in the early 80s. There in the archive, I was checking, and I saw how board decisions about supporting missions and missionaries. One of the missionaries was working, I think, in the eastern part of Nigeria. The board approved 400 naira or so for him. I said, wow, 100 naira. That's around in the early 80s, around 1981, 82. And since I joined this church, like I said, in 1989, I had made this church already supporting EMS missionaries. And it has always been like that. What we do is we adopt a missionary and then we support as is done generally. But beyond that, we also go to visit them. Yeah. We visit almost all the missionaries that the church supports. I'm saying almost because we still have two that are standing for now, the current missionaries that we're supporting. And we would have done that, but it was because of the corona pandemic that stopped us from going out. But still, that is still in the pipeline, still in the offing. And we couldn't go then. One is in Cameroon because of logistics of travels. And then the other one is in Yobe, also because of the security situations. That's what has stopped us from going to visit. But for all of our missionaries, I know since the 80s, it's either we go to visit them, and when we go to visit, we go loaded. Normally, we go spend sometimes 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, depending on the arrangement. And then we go with the Jesus theme equipment. We share the gospel of Christ to communities around the base of our missionaries. During the day, we go one-on-one evangelism, and during the night, we show the Jesus theme. And souls are won. They are discipled and followed up and counseled there and then. Some of them we hand over to the local missionary that is there to continue with the work. In some years, we don't go, we invite the missionaries themselves to come, all of them. They come with their wives, their children. We alternate the interaction. It's either we go or we ask them to come. When they come, sometimes we lodge them at ECWA guest house with their families. Sometimes we ask them to stay with members of the church who have homes and are willing to welcome them in. The idea is because we want them to interact also with members of the church. Let it not just be one-sided. Let it not just be that they will come to church and then fellowship and go away. But for every family that will welcome a missionary to their home, they will get to know them better. They will get to know the situations, the circumstances in which they find themselves. And so that's how it has always been. And because of the financial commitment, we normally stagger, the invitations if they are coming or when we are going. Maybe we ask 4 of them to come at a time. Then we give space for about 4 or 5 months. Then we invite the other team to come so that we will lighten the financial burden on the church. Missions is capital intensive, as it were. Inviting families to come from Cameroon or Chad, from eastern Nigeria or from northeastern Nigeria, wherever, is capital intensive. It involves a lot of money. Pay for their transport, logistics, their feeding, their accommodation. And when they come, you must at least find something to give them maybe for their own welfare. So that has been our engagement generally. Well, as a church, we are involved in that. And everybody is carried along, not just for the church. All the agencies and the organs of the church are also involved with missions activities. The women fellowship, the men's fellowship, the youth fellowship, even our zonal fellowship. I know of one of our zonal fellowships that has adopted an EMS missionary for the past 4 or 5 years. They're paying his monthly stipend for the past 4 or 5 years. And everybody's involved. And when we go or when they come, we interact, like I said. We get to know how they are faring. We get to know what are their needs. And then we bring them home, and then we find a way of stepping in, of bridging the gap, and making sure that they have needs that are required for them to carry on with the work of winning souls for Jesus Christ. For instance, the last time some of them came, they asked for bundles of zinc to roof their houses, and some for the place of worship. Some of them, they require motorcycles to move from one point to another. One of the ladies that came some time ago shared with us how every Sunday she moves to 3 different locations to hold church services for members who have given their lives to Christ. And for every Sunday, she treks from one location to another about maybe 30, 40 minutes. At the point, she treks for close to 1.5 hours, from one location to another. And once she's done, then she starts finding her way back home. So we felt that we needed to get a means of transport for her so that it will ease her movements in doing the work of the Lord. So essentially, that's just what I will have to say with respect to our involvement generally with missions and missionary support. It's a wonderful experience when you interact with these missionaries. You can see it, joy bubbling out of their hearts when they see you visit. It encourages them to know that they are not alone in the work of missions. It encourages them to know that the church that is supporting them is fully, practically involved in what they are doing. It's something else when you see some people coming from a distant place to come to visit. So whenever we go, they are always in high spirits. I recall several years ago, we went to visit one of the missionaries, and because of the excitement, he was slaughtering all the chickens in the village. He was rearing chickens. So before you know what's happening, we see him cutting chickens. In about 2-3 hours, he's cutting another chicken again. It got to a point where I want to plead with him. Say, no, we have not come here to eat chickens. Just forget about him. It shows the excitement he had to have us around. So whenever we go, we feel also challenged by the situations in which they find themselves in. Sometimes you go, you find the rooms they are staying in, it's just nothing to write home about. It's so pathetic. The accommodation, sometimes it's just thatched roof, that they just make use, to pass the night and to sleep in. That was one of the missionaries, EMS missionaries, who visited also several years ago. When we went, the wife was pregnant, believing God for delivery. I think about 2 months or so to her delivery, we visited. So the welfare package we gave him, the man said he kept it safely somewhere. And that was what he used when they were going for the delivery with the wife in the hospital. And it was quite an encouragement and quite exciting to be part and parcel of what God was doing in the life of that man. He will never forget that intervention that the church did for them. And also, for us as a church, Good News Church has been quite supportive of missionary activities. Quite supportive. you can hardly mention any need in this place that people will not respond to one way or the other. I recall sometimes 2 years ago when we shared, the burden of EMS and the support that the EMS missionaries received. We announced in the church here that EMS missionaries collect 20,000 naira per month as their own monthly allowance or stipend. And some of them have 4 or 5 children with their wife, and then we begin to analyze what will 20,000 naira do to a family of 6 or 7 or even more. Some of them, they have relations who stay with them. And then because they are the missionary in the community, they are the pastor, the doctor, the teacher, every person comes to the home, to benefit from the pastor himself or the missionary himself. So when we were ahead of that, wow, the members here were challenged. And I recall that about 1 week after that, one of the members called me to his office and he wrote a check of 1 million naira for me that we should bring to the church and support the missionaries with. I said, wow. I was quite challenged and encouraged myself. And when the member was writing the check, he was asking, he said, will 1 million naira do? Will it do anything? I said, yeah, it will go a long way in assisting the missionaries, in supporting and encouraging them. And the impression he was creating is that he could have done more. Supposing I say we will need about 2 or 3 million, I'm sure he would have written a check of 3 million naira for us that day. But because we don't want to take undue advantage of people. And when I came and I showed the senior pastor the check, I said, wow, if this were to be one of these Pentecostal churches or these new generation pastors, having such opportunities, they will have, messed it up and, taken undue advantage of that member. But so well, we have a long way to go. Let's go gradually. And up to now, that member still supports missions and missionary activities. So, you see people supporting. The other time we mentioned that we need a borehole somewhere, members supported. We need well, we need classrooms for members, we need books, for EMS children and their community where they serve. People support, people donate. So even though the challenges are quite enormous, but as God helps us and helps members have also be very positive in supporting the work of missions and missionary activities as a local assembly. The disposition of the present-day youth in the church towards missions and then soul winning is quite appalling, quite disturbing to me personally.
It's quite interesting learning about the history of ECWA Good News Amadou Bellowe, isn't it? We'll quickly take a break now. Stay with us.
Ikon Allah ya karfafa ni, ikon Allah ya canja ni, inda ba don kalmar Allah, ida na ja da baya, ida ba don shirin Allah, na zama malalaci.
He has been consistently demonstrating great tenacity in promoting the work of mission over a very long period. One very intriguing thing about him is the fact that he is physically armless and blind. One wonders what has been his motivation for such an unusual commitment to the cause of missions.
Wanda ya san Yesu almasihu ba sai an gaya masa ba ya bautawa Allah ba. Domin a yadda nake na karbi Yesu tun kakannina suna da rai sai ya zamana yau ruhu ya izani na tallafan EMS.
Ordinarily, the natural mind will complain of his physical predicaments, and in line with the modern gospel, he would have threatened God to withdraw his commitment to worship him if he did not intervene in his situation and heal him. But this is not the case with Mr. Audu. On the contrary, He is more determined to worship and serve God the best way possible, and he trusts God for his sufficient grace. Beyond his physical arms, beyond his physical eyes, he sees God through his active mind, being to see as the Lord wills he does, as to how this man is sustained. Like David in Psalms 121 verse 2, Mr. Audu would say, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." And out of his meager income, as the Lord helps him, he puts aside the sum of 500 naira monthly to pay to the EMS account for the support of missionaries.
500 nake bayarwa. Sai ya zamana a wannan shekaran goal da na sa gaba na nace ba zan ba da 500 ba, na ba da 850. A yanzu na riga na kai kudin wata 6 5,100 a yanzu haka presently. Saboda haka ni na san wanda nake bauta masa, shi yasa yana iza ni in yi abin da na iya yi.
Always giving thanks to God the Father for everything, for it takes a grateful heart, and a heart that sees life through the eye of God, to really give back to God, especially in such a way that the world will term foolish.
Yadda kake kallo na, ba idon ba hannu, sai an san mini, in an san mini sannan nema in mika ga mashidin Yesu almasihu. Dama littafi ya ce mana mu yadda shi a baya, za mu cinci shi a gaba.
If 1 million ECWA members would emulate Mr. Audu Akawu and give 500 naira per month for EMS mission work, it means EMS will be receiving 500 million naira monthly and 6 billion in a year.
Ina roka, ina kuma ba da gaske cewa kamar yadda nake maganan nan, da yardan Allah roka nake, Ubangiji iza wa'anda za su tallafi EMS sama da miliyan 5 ma.
Can we not have 1 million members who will take up this challenge? Aside challenging us not to have any excuse for not worshiping God and giving for the work of evangelizing the nations for Christ, Mr. Audu Akawu's testimony is also a motivation to always give thanks to God the Father for everything.
In da aka bayar karka dubi baya, in ka riga ka sa a hannu karka wawaya, domin wanda ya sa hannu a kan keken noma kare duba baya.
Whoever you are, wherever you are, and whatever be your condition, hug the voice of Jesus crying, "Who will go and walk today?"
And I will follow you. I go all of the days of my life, Lord. I go.
Welcome back from the break. The zeal towards mission activities seems to have grown cold among the present-day youth, and it is of paramount importance for youth to get engaged in mission work. In this next clip, Elder Manasseh shares with us his time as a youth president and how his church is currently involved in church planting and, most importantly, engages the youths. Let's take a look.
I grew up in this church, and I know what we used to do when we were younger as youths, as far as mission is concerned. I was a youth president for 6 years in this church. And during our time, every quarter of the year, we go out for mission trips. So it means we go out 4 times in a year. After every 3 months, we locate a mission base, and then we arrange to go for missionary outreaches. And then everybody is involved. People are so excited. They are, the level of excitement and commitment is so high. I recall one of the times we were going to visit a community or a village around Bauchi State. One of our members who was staying in Tilde was to join us when we are leaving. So we were to leave from Jos, pass through Tilde, pick her, and then pass on to Bauchi State. Because then there was no phone. She waited for us because we said we were going to leave around 10 o'clock in the morning. But we didn't leave until around 3 p.m. or thereabouts. She waited on the road for close to 5 hours or 6. She couldn't contact us on phone. We couldn't also contact her. We had challenges with the bus, so we didn't take off as scheduled. Yet she was there waiting. We would take a coastal bus of about 30 youths. It will be filled to capacity. We'll have to plead with some of the youths, to wait maybe until the next opportunity. And that's how it has always been. And for every quarter, when we're giving our own financial report, we give financial report quarterly. You discover that missions and evangelism will take mostly 70 to 80% of our expenditure at that time. And that gives us joy. Anytime it falls low, about 60 or thereabouts, we'll be, what did we do? That we're just supporting or doing missions with just 60%? And besides that, from this church, from our own time too, like I said, many youths responded to the call of God upon their lives to serve God full time as pastors, as missionaries. I know even amongst us in ECWA, Reverend Caesar Bulus was one of us in the youth fellowship. Pastor Bayo Yebade was one of us. Brother Ibn Yusuf, who is now with Al-Bishir Harvesters Foundation, is the director there. He was one of us. Reverend Stephen Bala, an ECWA ordained minister, was one of us. In fact, he was the financial secretary and at the point secretary of our youth fellowship. Habila Musa, Sister Joyce Yarling, Brother Leslie Sanders, Sister Elizabeth Abedo, who is now in Peace House in Boko. And several of them were with us in the youth fellowship. And that is how we grew up, we evolved. Several of us have served God and are still serving the Lord because of the discipline, the mentorship we got while in the youth fellowship. Several of us, even in our secular positions, we've been through jets ourselves, and God is using us in the places that God has called us to serve, even in secular positions. I recall when I was in the bank, ECWA pastors would come, and we'll sign up for them, even when their accounts are not be credited. Once we have schedule for their payments, even before, all those logistics in the banks, we sign up for them. And they get so excited that they have representatives serving the Lord wherever we find ourselves, So, the challenge we have for our present-day youths is that we don't see that happening in the lives of the youths. And that's what pains my heart. That's the burden of our heart generally. There's a wide gap. See, I've named so many people with whom we serve the Lord in these places, and this place, and I've gone to different places and also serving the Lord. But what about the present-day youth? We don't see that commitment, that zeal, that passion for missions, for soul winning. We don't see that in the present-day youth. And the question is, what happens when we are no longer here? Because we are moving. And we needed to hand over the baton to the present-day youth. The obvious thing is that missions may not be done the way we used to do it before. And so we need to be proactive. We need to be, intentional in mobilizing these youths, in getting present-day strategies of missions. So the other time we were talking with some of my friends around and saying, how do we engage the youths? Probably we begin to use the internet, social media, because you find the young men, the young women of this day, they are engaged with their mobile phones, 24/7. And is there a way we could also use the internet, the social media, to reach out with the gospel of Christ, so that we will carry these youths along? As we are living, we ensure that the baton is handed over to the next generation. That's our prayer, that's our cry, our heart's desire. That's what we are believing. that the Lord will do in the lives of the youths. And I mentioned to us initially that Dr. Andrew Spirit, who came here to start this church several years ago, records have it that he remained single until he died. Single. He preached all his life. He never got married. But see how his life has churned out thousands of believers, of people who are serving the Lord, loving the Lord with the whole of their hearts. And that's what we want to do. That by the time we leave here, we will have left, a testimony for younger generations that there were men and women who served the Lord in their own lifetime in this place. And then they will continue like that and hand it over even to generations yet to born. So that's the challenge and what we're trusting the Lord to do for us with our present-day youths. This is now. We have planted churches in somewhere, one in Gidangambo, in Kwampan, local government in the Plateau State, yes. And then we have Tengamungwe, in Riom LGC, and several other places. And it gives us joy to see that those churches are standing. So Goodness Church is involved financially with all this. Not to talk of the requests for financial support we get here every month. We know we do our monthly board meetings. And for every board meeting we hold, we have requests for support to build churches, to plant churches. And we support substantially. I know that there are EMS missionaries who will be going to Mauritania, some of them will be going to Mali, some will be going to Cameroon, and requests come to us. And we support them substantially to ensure that they plant churches and ensure that those churches grow to maturity. So as it is now, our hearts are open, to adopt more missionaries. But when you put all those things in perspective and with the support we give, it shows you our commitment to missions. Also to add, the current EMS Golden Supporters Initiative, this church has keyed into it. And I can confirm to you, at least from the records I have, that members of this church have supported in hundreds of thousands to EMS Golden Supporters Initiative. That's not to mention those who have, made transfers online directly to EMS headquarters account, which we don't even know. So these are various interventions that ECWA Goodness Church is involved in. And people do it with joy and with gladness, in spite of the difficulties and the hard economic conditions the nation is passing through, individuals are passing through. Once it comes to missions, people are just so excited to doing it. And also to the next issue you are mentioning, that what happens to, or what support or encouragement do you have for churches that are not involved with missions? Then the question I want to ask is, what are they involved in, by the way? Yeah, if you're not involved in missions, what are you involved? What are you doing as a church? Yeah, what are you engaged in as a church? And EMS and ECWA is evangelical. We are all beneficiaries of men and women, who jeopardized their lives to bring the gospel of Christ to us. And we cannot do anything less. It will be a disservice to the kingdom of God and to the efforts, the commitment of those men and women, who gave their lives for us now not to be involved in activities of missions and evangelism. So I want to call on all other ECWA organizations, ECWA churches, ECWA families and individuals that we need to join our hands together and then to carry on with this work. I know that God himself will be happy with us. Yeah. We ourselves will find fulfillment and contentment once we get involved. I tell you, anytime we go for these medical outreaches or we go for missions or go to visit any of these missionaries and you see souls coming over to Jesus, you see missionaries getting excited, you see you putting a roof over the head of a missionary. Abba, what joy can be more than that? We get so happy. We get so excited ourselves to get involved in those involvements and engagements with missionaries. So every one of us, we need to join our hands together to move this work forward. We've been called severally and differently with our various professions, our vocations, But we have all been called to serve the Lord. You can be a lawyer, you can be an accountant, a teacher, a nurse, a doctor. You can be a carpenter, you can be driving keke or motorcycle, whatever it is, whatever sphere of life the Lord has called you, you must be there serving the Lord. Yeah. And wherever you find yourself, ensure that you represent Christ and do that well. That's the hallmark of our lives as believers. You must not necessarily be a pastor or be into full-time ministry as an evangelist or a missionary. I mentioned to you that, when I was in the bank, how I used to do with ECWA pastors. Just by the way, I never knew then that pastors also need cash. But once their check come, they'll just be trooping in. And before, we enter those processes we carry in the bank, we have to credit the accounts, remove the charges. Those of them who collected checkbooks or withdrawal slips, we have to deduct it from source before we credit the balance to the accounts. And sometimes because of the pressure or some network issues, I'll just sign up on the checks and say, pay them. Just pay them and let them go. I recall one of the time my pastor came, Reverend Silas Yako, he came and with some of the pastors, and I signed off on their checks, and they were paid. Then Silas Yako said, Manasseh, inside the bank. I know Silas Yako with his own way of life, and we just laughed it off. So that's how it's supposed to be. Represent Christ well, wherever you find yourself. Carry this light with you. Yeah, let people see Christ in you. As an engineer, you are in your site, construction site. Let people see Christ in you. Share the gospel with people. Yeah. Somebody came once and met me when I was in Lagos. And the way I attended to him, he said, are you a Christian? I said, why are you asking? He said, I saw the way you're doing things, and because he came and I assisted him, and when he was leaving, he gave me a tip. I said, no, you don't have to bother about that. Don't do that. Because one, it was against the policy of the bank for you to collect tips from customers. And then because as a believer, why not help somebody? So he found a very unique service which he received that day. So it gives us joy to do that. I know that even members of this church have shared, how, they've represented Christ. One of our lawyers here told us how he shared Christ with his colleague. He said he has been a friend with a colleague for several years, a Muslim. And it occurred to him that he needed to share Christ with this friend. And one of the days they met, and he sat the friend down and told him about Jesus. Even though the friend got offended and annoyed, so well, as far as he's concerned, he has discharged his obligation and his responsibility to that Muslim friend. That's how it's supposed to be. Whatever we have, you see, in Good News Church here, we have so many professors. Just recently, I can say we have about 5 or 6 members who are promoted to be professors, in the university. We have people who have been promoted in their various places of work. But again, we also have members who sell pepper in the market, members who drive motorcycles or kada. So we have 2 extremes, for those who are well educated and those who are coming up. That notwithstanding, and we have the middle class too. Every one of us, we have been encouraging people, wherever you find yourself, in the market, in the classroom as a professor, wherever it is, in the hospital, as a nurse, riding keke, share Christ and make him known. EMS is doing a lot. EMS is doing great things. As at the last count, we understand that there are about 2,000 families that are involved as full-time workers with EMS, serving the Lord within Nigeria and even beyond. And it gives us joy as a church, to be involved with what EMS is doing. 3 of the missionaries that we support as a church are based outside Nigeria. One is in one of the families is in Malawi. The other one is in Botswana. The other one is in Chad. The other one is in Cameroon. The other family. Now, that's what EMS is doing, and it's because of EMS and the support of churches that this work is going on and is expanding. Now, the encouragement I want to give to EMS is that we must start to think outside the box on how to reach out to this gospel of Jesus. I just mentioned a few moments ago that we were supposed to have visited one of our missionaries in Yobe State about a year or so ago now. But that has not been possible. Why? Because of the security challenge going on in that place. It's not as if we are afraid or we are timid or something. But we're just trying to be cautious, not trying to be very stupid or presumptuous or taking, the issue of faith for granted. Yeah, we just to be cautious and study the situation before we do the visit. But what we're trying to say now is EMS will begin to find ways of reaching out with this gospel of Christ in spite of the challenges we have. And what has been, bugging me over time, that can we reach out to these people, maybe with the social media, can we prepare CDs and tape recorders and carry them in bulk and distribute them to all these communities where we cannot reach with the gospel of Christ, as it were. I know that in those days when we used to go out with the Jesus theme equipment from the Great Commission movement, and those powerful horn loudspeakers that we used to go out with. You mount a loudspeaker here, people will be hearing you from Tuduwada or Feringada, many kilometers away in the night. They'll be hearing the gospel of Christ preached. But you see, it's going to be difficult for you to do that now. Because as you are doing that, you are attracting your enemies. You say, Christians are here. But is it possible now, since that is becoming difficult for us to do, to have tape recorders? I know that is going to involve a lot of financing. Yeah. So missionary activities and mission activities, we have to be wise in what we do now. We have to be intentional, because this kingdom of the gospel must be preached to all. See what is happening in the Middle East now, in Iraq, Saudi Arabia. That's what we call quiet invasion. You are invading them quietly with the gospel of Jesus Christ. With radio, TV programs, they are having CDs in their homes. They don't have churches like we do here. We sing and clap and play guitars and musical equipment. We pray and shout, at the top of our voices. That's not what happens. It doesn't happen there. People gather in the quietness of their rooms, and then they share fellowships, That's how we should be thinking in EMS and in ECWA generally. And then to ensure, too, that the churches are carried along. These things I'm mentioning to you, EMS must also step up in advocacy, in follow-up, in mobilization, in visit to churches. Let people know what is on ground. Let people know the needs. When people are conscientized when people are made to know what they needed to do as believers, as children of God, they will key into it. I mentioned to you what one of the members did to us when we once people are made to know, they will do it. And particularly too now that people contend with so many needs and the resources are few, or resources are not able to meet up with all of our needs, and it has always been like that. And then you EMS will just fold your hands and wait. We must be up and doing in our responsibilities and appreciating the members in thanking them for what they're doing, and also to prop them up to do much more than what we're doing right now. And as we do that, I know that God is going to help us to achieve the goals of reaching out with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I want to thank members of this church. Kai, I'm just filled with joy about what is happening here. I wished, I could call them by names, but I'm not going to do that. I will not do that. Because if I do that, I'll be in trouble. They will not want that to be done themselves. But God, who knows them as individuals, is going to reward them openly. There are families who keep asking from time to time, Manasseh, what's happening to so-and-so EMS missionary that we visited some times ago? That issue, how far? That man whose daughter was kidnapped in Kebbi State, what happens? And stories of members getting involved with what God is doing through the church. I'm so excited because as a missions elder and the interactions I have with them, members are highly, highly committed. And I want to appreciate God for them. I want to thank God for their lives. And I pray too that God will surpass every of their own expectations and grant their heart's desires. That whatsoever they are looking up to God for, Bible says, whoever waters shall be watered. Because I've been involved in the things of the Lord will not pass them by. Yeah. Because they have done this for the Lord. Bible says that whoever gives a cup of water to somebody in the name of the prophet shall never miss a prophet's reward. So when Jesus Christ will come, I know, and I know for certain that not just the missionaries who are there in the field doing the work full time, but those of us who are here supporting the work of missions, giving generously, those of us who have been on our knees, praying and interceding and believing God for things to be done in the field, God is going to reward us equally, if not even more. And those of us who call missionaries by phone, who send text messages, and every person who is involved in one way or the other, God is going to reward us and bless us beyond our own expectations. That's my desire. That's my prayer for members of Goodness Church.
In Elder Manasseh's words, it will be a disservice to the kingdom of God, the efforts and commitment of the men and women who gave their lives for missions, if we fail to support the work of God. I hope this episode motivates churches that are yet to key into this vision. This is a good time to also thank all our EMS Golden supporters. Thank you for your support towards missions. At this point, we've come to the end of today's episode. Thank you for watching. But before I go, I'd like to remind you that we're open to featuring your church on this special edition. If your local church is a supporter of EMS missionaries, you can contact us through the number displayed on the screen. Remember to catch up on our previous episode on our YouTube channel at EMS of ECWA. Subscribe and share. Have a blessed week ahead.